Project Big Picture. Could it be the end of English football as we know it? Or is it actually a good thing? We're going to be discussing that on this week's edition of The Social Club. Hello and welcome back to another live edition of The Social Club, the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast where we discuss all things football, not just Arsenal. We touch on a little bit of Arsenal, but it's our general show and I'm delighted to be joined once again by my excellent panel. Welcome back to the podcast, Symeou Alavi. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad, my friend. Not too bad. Looking forward to the international break coming to an end. Mr. Dan De Luca, welcome. How are you, sir?
Yeah, all good. I've not enjoyed this international break. I think if you win the game before an international break, you hate the international break. And if you lose the game, you're not that bothered.
It's because we're married. Made that joke last week, didn't I?
Just about married. My marriage can withstand one COVID lockdown, and I've used that one up. So it's on the brink.
Oh man!
I think for me, I was saying this on a podcast earlier. I actually look forward to the international break now because it means a weekend that's less intense for me. But by the time I get to this point, so like the Monday, Tuesday of the following week, then I'm desperate for it to come back. So it's nice having the Saturday and Sunday without any work, but then when you come to that Monday, Tuesday, it starts to then drag a little bit, and I'm desperate. Lost you there, Alavi. Say that again, mate. Yeah,
so when you work like branch from bank holiday, like is that Tuesday worth it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's mad.
This international break peaked too early for me because I did a world first for the Luca. I watched 3 penalty shootouts at the same time, just flicking up and down through the channels, which was sensational. And then after that, it just fizzled out into nothingness.
I actually chose to watch the Scotland one then. I don't know why. I just stuck with the Scotland one. I don't know. There was 3 going on, like you said. The choice was a difficult one, but I went with the old Tartan Army for some reason. Anyway, we're here to talk about Project Big Picture. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to TV Sports Blog for their continued support of the Social Club. Big hello to John and the team over there. And check out tvsportsblog.com for all sorts of content covering a variety of sports. So check it out. I'm sure you'll love the site and I'm sure you'll love some of the work that they do over there. Right, Project Big Picture. What is it? It's something that's been in the news quite a bit in the last few days, and I'm going to just run through some of the key points of what the proposal entails for those of you who maybe haven't read sort of the ins and outs of it, and then we're going to discuss it in some detail. So the Premier League under this proposal would be reduced from 20 to 18 clubs. The EFL Cup and the Community Shield would both be scrapped. Right now there is a one club, one vote principle, but that would be abolished, and that would mean a difference in the kind of voting system, and it would mean that the power would be in the 9 clubs who have remained in the Premier League the longest. That at the moment that would be Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Southampton, Tottenham, West Ham. There would only 6 of the 9 longest serving clubs would need to vote for major change. There would be a £250 million payment up front to the EFL, plus £100 million payment to the Football Association, and 25% of the Premier League's annual revenue, up from 4%, would go to the EFL clubs. Now, when I look at this proposal, there are some good points, I think, anyway, and there are some bad points. I'm going to come to you first, De Luca, on this, because it feels very much like this is geared to try and persuade the lower league clubs to go for it, but in doing that, to wrestle the power over to certain members of the Premier League. But if you were an EFL club now looking at that, if you're in League 1, League 2, for example, the headline, I guess, is 25% of the Premier League's annual revenue is coming your way, as opposed to 4. That's got to be a big sort of factor in them kind of coming to a vote, isn't it?
Well, 750 million, isn't it? Monetary terms. That is a lot.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's I've never ever been on the fence more in my life about a thing. Because, like you said at the beginning, there's some good points and bad points. So I guess we'll build up slowly, and throughout the pod, I guess we'll probably get a bit more animated about some of the individual bits that we don't like, which is typically what we do. But there's a thing we've got to remember, I guess, is in any kind of deal in the history of the universe, someone rich gets richer. That's how it works. So what I think everyone in the football world needs to agree on is we need to save the lower clubs. Whatever that takes, we need to save the lower clubs. We can't have clubs going out of business. Clubs have been teetering on the brink for a long time. COVID has pushed them over the edge. So there needs to be a way to protect the status of those clubs and the communities within which those clubs thrive. So absolutely fantastic that there is something being discussed to enable that to happen. Now, some of the parts of Project Picture to me feel a little bit unnecessary, and I guess we'll get into some of those as the pod goes on. So just the big bits for me that I guess I like to start with: reducing the Premier League from 20 to 18. I think is perfectly fine. I think 18 teams is big enough for a season what is already long. So I'm perfectly happy with that as a solution. Giving money to the clubs below, I'm perfectly happy with as well. I'm a little bit confused around the whole 9 longest serving member clubs, or that's how it's been packaged. I'm really confused by that. The Carabao Cup, again, I'm a bit confused by that. That you know, in reality, it's one game if you want it to be one game. I don't see what the big deal is. You know, the squads are big enough now, and getting rid of the Community Shield, I'm not sure what that achieves. But the biggest thing for me, if I'm reading it properly, is the scrapping of the playoffs. And this is the bit that makes Project Picture for me a little bit. I don't know. You're talking to someone who's, I'm a compulsive gambler, right? So,
but Dan, you attain playoffs though, because the idea is that the team that finishes 16th will end up going into a playoff against the Championship sides.
Yeah, so it's a similar model to how Serie A used to be.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's how it works in Germany at the moment.
Exactly. So you do attain that playoff excitement from there at least.
Yeah, but it's not the excitement I'm interested in. So from a gambling perspective, okay, I don't want to go out of business if I'm a lower league club.
Deluca, just speak a little bit closer to your mic, mate. It's not coming through very loud. Go ahead.
Sure. So how hard is it now to get back into the Premier League? This is the bit that makes me uncomfortable. So you either have to win the division or beat a team who are already in it. Because they're talking about just 2 teams coming up every season. So they're essentially closing the shop. So if you're a team who get relegated, a big team who have a couple of bad years, like Aston Villa, for example, how do you get back? Sunderland, how are they getting back? And the dream that these clubs cling on to, so you're keeping the Championship at 24 clubs, aren't you? So it's a long season in the Championship. And for the majority of those clubs, that season is over in December. So their purpose becomes just to exist as a football club. And I think there's got to be a slightly better compromise that can be found. So that's my initial summary of some of my concerns.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the playoff thing either. I'm not a massive fan of that.
It's good.
No, I'm not a massive fan of that. Go on, Alavi, your initial thoughts on the whole thing.
I like the playoff thing. I think it's like what Luca said in terms of rich getting richer, and you alluded to it as well, Harry. It's one of those ironic things where there's more fairness, but it's somehow from inequality. So it's this ironic thing. It's like when you're at work and everyone gets a pay rise, and the guy next to you gets a bit more, but you're still getting one. So you deal with it. So the lower league clubs are happy for Man United and Liverpool to have this power because they're gaining from it. And it doesn't help when the Premier League come out and go, do you know what? We're going to give you this derisory 25 million offer. And the big picture gives 250 million. And it shows the extent of what they're prepared to do. And then you look at the Premier League, the last transfer window was 1.2 billion they spent. So actually the Premier League going, we'll give 25 million. It's just not enough. So no wonder the EFL clubs and Rick Parry want this. Now, they didn't want it to the extent I thought they would. I thought they'd all go for it because they're all in need. But it's actually only 6 or 7 clubs at the moment out of the 72 that can't pay their players this month. So they're in a bad state, but it's not quite as bad as I thought. and they got together today, and apparently they were quite split. And the reason being was because even though they've got these this large amount of money, so you alluded to it, Harry, 25% instead of 4%, and they've got this solidarity payment every year that's going to happen, they feel like it's been done quite sneakily, and they feel that they've not been kept in the loop. And actually, what then happens? So in 2-3 years' time, do they all piss off to some Super League, and there's no deal anymore? And I think that's what some of the EFL clubs are worried about. I guess the last thing, what I would say is, it reminds me of, I don't know if you remember in 2019, the Premier League had this 3-year deal in their overseas rights. It was worth about $4 billion. And essentially beforehand, all of the clubs in the Premier League got 40 million. Doesn't matter where you finished, you got 40 million, right? So that adds up to like just under $1 billion. And this new deal came in and went, do you know what? We're going to do it so that the top clubs get the most from international TV rights and the bottom clubs get the least. However, the pot is bigger. The pot is 4 billion. So all the clubs just agreed to it because they were like, well, do you know what? It doesn't matter that we're getting, even the bottom place club was still getting paid less than when it was all equal. So it just makes you think people will agree to something that's not equal, or makes Man United and all Liverpool and whoever else have this power if they're going to gain from it. So this new formula that was distributed with the TV quite a few years ago shows how people will act. You will happily just do what's best for you. So I thought that was quite interesting, because Man United just went, you know what, we've got 1 billion fans around the world. We're not getting the same international TV money as Burnley. And Burnley went, well, we've got 40 million, and if we finish last, we'll get 60 million. So quid's in. And that's how I think EFL clubs will look at it. They won't look at the longevity. They won't look at the fact that X amount of clubs will go on paying the Super League. They'll just go, no more parachute payments, but we're getting 750 million split between us. I'll take that. Forget the historic, what was it? One vote, one club. Forget that. If you're getting paid a load of money.
The thing for me as well, one of the other things is, and I'm not against the kind of scrapping of the Carabao Cup. I'm not against the scrapping of the Community Shield even. But what you're doing there is, you know, and when you look around the rest of Europe, if you look at Germany, for example, if you look at Italy, there is one domestic cup competition, isn't there? So for England to go down to one domestic cup competition, same in Spain as the Copa del Rey. There's nothing else though. So if you were to go down to one cup competition, I don't think that is an outrageous point. But what you're doing here is you're toying with tradition. The English football fan who's grown up watching football in this country has a League Cup and an FA Cup. And you're kind of, I don't know, DDO, are we in danger of messing around with the things that make the English game stick out from the rest of kind of the world's competitions? You're on mute, mate.
Ooh. See, that's the only time I've made sense in all the podcasts, and you missed it. I think, there is messing with tradition, and in recent history, whether it's UEFA, FIFA, the English football pyramid, every time they've tried to mess with tradition and change things, it hasn't really worked out that well. So historically, the League Cup, when it first formed, I don't know, 40 odd, however many years ago now, it used to be unfashionable clubs that used to be winning it. You'd have Oxford, Luton, not all the big sides were in it typically. So I don't see why I think there are other ways it should have happened before now that could help lower teams to compete for money. So for example, does a Premier League team need to have a squad of 60 players, for example, like on the books? I know there's only 25 that can be registered, but you look at the size of the squads, that's quality players that lower teams can't benefit from. Then there's the loan market, where essentially you're flooding these clubs with players for free, and then if they're any good, you take them back, so they can't benefit from them. You're taking players out of lower league club academies, so they can't benefit. And there's so many things that don't really work in their favour. And I just look at it and say, well, if you're a big club, you've got a League Cup with a massive squad, what's the harm in keeping it? I don't see what we're really achieving. If you don't want to play in it that badly and it's that much of a distraction, then you can do what Jurgen Klopp did last year and send a load of wallies out to get spanked 5-0 and just get on with it. Why do you need to take that away from clubs who... Because if you're a smaller... If you take football back to basics, football is about having a club in your local area that everyone in that town supports, and win, lose, couple of beers, bit of pride, and there's promotions, relegations, and all sorts. Over the last 15, 20 years, the dream has been to get to the Premier League. You're taking that away. The FA Cup now is a bit of a nonsense. You've taken replays away. So if you're a lower league club, all you'd really want is a decent cup draw, try and get a 0-0 draw and bring them back to your place, and that was a good season. You've taken that away. There's no replays. So what is actually left for these clubs apart from just existing?
Do you not think, Dan, to a degree, I think this is what you were partly alluded to, that even if nothing comes of this, what it has done is shown that at the moment it's unfair and that there's too big a disparity. So even if this doesn't come to fruition, it's highlighted that what the Premier League are currently doing in terms of help and what the EFL clubs are currently getting is not enough. Because it just shows that there are other investments that are available. So even if this 250, 350 million doesn't come about, it shows that the 25 million offer that the Premier League had just isn't enough.
I think that on the one hand, I think we all agree that something needs to change. Something has to be done where the footballing pyramid is a fairer place, where clubs don't go bust, and they shouldn't go bust when there is so much money in the game, and there is a hell of a lot of money in the game. So we all agree that something needs to be done. What I feel uneasy about with this proposal is where it's come from, and the club's leading it. I mean, why are those two leading it?
What do you think?
We know where one of them is.
Yeah,
I mean, can eventually do what they want.
I mean, so you've got. I'm uneasy about the fact that two clubs seem to be leading this. Two clubs who, you call me biased, but have had the officials in their pockets and the systems and the leagues in their pockets for years. So that would only increase. Plus, this thing about the 9, I don't get that. And my club, Arsenal, would be one of the 9. So would yours, Dan. But I still feel uneasy about it. Why is it that
I think
9 of the 18...
They needed, basically, I read that they needed you need a 14 majority vote.
Now you do.
That's how things are now.
Yeah. And I think they just needed a way for it to not be... This is what they said. They needed a way for it to not be just the top 6. So that, how else can we make this? Let's just make it the longest serving clubs. And they got
but it's 9, not though, is it?
And it's near enough. Well, it is. They are the 9.
Are they?
I'm pretty sure.
Surely Aston Villa are longer serving than Southampton. I know they've gone down. I mean, in terms of longevity, in terms of the amount of years they've played in the division,
it was definitely based on longer serving from memory.
Yeah.
So longest serving today. So Southampton came up, I don't know, 5 years ago.
No, it's
no.
longest serving over the course of the Premier League. So from the day the Premier League started, the most seasons in the competition.
There's no way Southampton have been in the Premier League more than Aston Villa. No way.
Yeah, I haven't looked. I haven't looked, to be honest. But that was my understanding of it.
Southampton have been in League One, and this is the bit that leaves a sour taste.
Serving as in like forever, ever.
As in from the history of football.
Yeah.
No, it can't be, because it would be from when the Premier League.
You'd think so. But then they'd call that the old First Division. These are all these facts that are just kept, aren't they?
Or is it the 9 teams who haven't been relegated? The last 9 teams not to have been relegated. If that makes sense. So Southampton come up 5 or 6 years ago when Ricky Lambert.
Maybe, yeah.
That's the only possible thing. But the bit that leaves us out, there's a few things.
This. They've just gone, this mystery.
No, it's in 9 teams, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, what about Aston Villa? They were ever present until 3 seasons ago, and then they stayed down for 2 years. They come back up. I don't really
want West Ham having a vote on anything, if I'm completely honest.
Agreed. Although West Ham are against it. West Ham are publicly spoken against it. The thing for me that leaves a sour taste.
What did Arsenal Spurs put? A no comment vote?
I don't know. Levy probably done the maths.
Yeah.
Levy probably done the maths and works out what costed it. But the sour taste about this
didn't want to pay for postage, so couldn't vote.
Yeah, exactly. But look at Manchester City. What right have Manchester City got to suddenly decide they're an elite? They're the most elite. They've won 4 leagues in the last 8 seasons or whatever it is. But 10 years ago, they were in, or 11, 12 years ago, they were in They're in the third tier. They lost to Bury, who are now bankrupt. So what we're basically saying is the only criteria to get into this club is to get bought out by a lunatic. That makes me uneasy.
Talking about that, hold on. Talking about that's a good point. I'm pretty sure that these clubs now have the power to stop other takeovers.
I was going to get to this. At least we now know why the Newcastle takeover didn't go through, because no one has dreamt this up this week. They've been talking about this for the last 6 months, so there's a little bit in there, isn't there? But let's start with Tottenham.
1 second, Didier. Before you go on to that, why this is very clearly calculated in a certain way is why 9, right? Why are we not talking about 10? It's 9 because if you need 9, no, forget that. If you go to 9, right, you only need 6 votes. It's the big 6, isn't it? So it's irrelevant of who the other 3 are, whether it's Southampton, whether it's Everton, whether it's Aston Villa. It's completely irrelevant because the big 6 will still gang up and do what they want. But they've done it in a way.
Already had more of a power within that 9. I'm pretty sure it's already stated that 6 will have more of the power within that.
No, at the moment, currently, anything that happens, it needs to be voted by 14 clubs.
No,
right. That's how it is.
If this goes through, this proposal goes through, I'm pretty sure those 6 are allowed more than the other 3. If you read between the lines, those 6 are given more power.
I don't think that's the case.
How I read it is it needed to be 6 votes.
6 votes of the 9.
And the media have made an assumption that those 6. Yeah, exactly. But and the problem I've got is, okay, so you got Manchester City, who, if they weren't bought out 10 years ago, they wouldn't be in the club. If Newcastle were last year, would they be in there suddenly? Then you've got Southampton, who used to float around in the bottom 5. They tried their best to get relegated for 15 years in a row. Then Mount Letizia retired, and they did, and now they're back and they've done okay. They're in the club. Leicester City have won the league 4 years ago. No mention of them. And Tottenham, what right have Tottenham got to be in there? In the general scheme of things,
I'm glad you said that before I did.
No, but what right have they got? So 10 years ago, Tottenham hadn't finished in the top.
If you've got a certain amount of
top 8,
bringing in all the revenue, right? Then why don't they just get a bit more of a say? Playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, but it's like pass the parcel.
Who gets more of a choice?
Because there's no
person being paid $1 million or the person.
No, but there's no integrity in that, is there? Because what happens is
the world doesn't work.
No, but you just open a bigger gap between those big 6 and the rest of the league, and that's the whole problem with this. Is that, and by the way, it's any 6 votes from the 9 I've just looked will do. So what you're going to get is those 6 clubs who do bring in the most revenue, as you've said, are just all going to gang up on everything, and it just makes it impossible for anybody else to break into that. And one of the things I love about the Premier League is that it is so competitive, is that you can go away to the 18th place side and get beat. You can go to the 20th place side and get beat. And we often look at other leagues, and we look at Serie A, for example, and we say, oh, Juventus run away with it every year. Well, it's not to that case here, because obviously there are a number of big clubs, but what you end up with is 2 mini leagues. And then you might as well just have 2 separate competitions.
Which is what could happen. But where's the integrity in not helping the lower league clubs? Are you saying that the Glazers don't care about Macclesfield Town? Because you'll be mistaken. They clearly do. Look at what they're trying to do to help.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why they're doing it, yeah. No, they're just trying to get votes. They've got to give the voter something to appeal to them.
What would you do right now? If you supported an EFL, you supported a League One team, a League Two team, what would you be thinking right now? Like, what are you going to say no?
I think that it would be...
Your player's about to leave because they're not getting paid that month.
I think it would... Yeah, but that is a consequence of a systemic issue that's been going on for years, and a pandemic. And these are... there are a lot of EFL clubs that even before the pandemic were being badly run and in a bad place. Now, let's not make any mistake and make out that this is the Glazers and FSG at Liverpool feeling sorry for Macclesfield and the other clubs that are struggling at this moment, and they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're not. They're doing it to sweeten up the rest of the EFL so that they can get their votes and they can do whatever the fuck they want going forward, and they can take control of the game. Who was it that described, I think it was Chris Sutton, who described, and I don't often agree with Chris Sutton because I think he's a bit of a bellend, but He called it would become a footballing cartel. And that is exactly what it would be. I think that's the best definition or description, that I've heard from anyone discussing this. I think we're in real danger of that happening. And I say that as a fan of one of the clubs that would have that power, that would be one of the big powerful forces. I still worry about it, though.
The problem is there's a disproportionate amount of people in the country who support one of the 6 clubs we support. Now, I support Tottenham. I know why I support Tottenham, because I was born in Enfield. And if you're born in Enfield and you don't support Tottenham, then you shouldn't support a football team, because Tottenham, that's the area. If you're born in Nottingham and you're walking around in a Man United shirt while Nottingham Forest and Notts County, struggle for revenue, then you're an arsehole, and you shouldn't have the ability to even listen to me speak at this moment in time. That's what the problem is. And when it comes back to the integrity bit, we are applying, we work in corporate companies or whatever, we're applying, corporate mindset to a situation. But the integrity bit is the Premier League that caused this to begin with. Let's be under no illusion. There weren't clubs going out of business before 1993. Accrington Stanley did. Maybe Scarborough, or a couple of cases, rare cases where clubs went out of business. It's since the Premier League came in that the problem has occurred in these lower clubs to begin with. Now, the world's pretty cutthroat. I'm not expecting constant handouts, but there are ways of doing this before we get to this extreme situation. Now, the pandemic has forced the hand a little bit. That means it needs to be slightly bigger than perhaps it would have been. But there was no intention whatsoever to help these teams out until the pandemic has forced a hand, and we've actually seen doors closing and clubs literally running out of money. But to get to a situation where these 6 clubs want something in return, I just don't understand why it needs to be so drastic. And to close the door on promotion to that degree, it just doesn't sit comfortably with me.
It's the voting on every decision that you think, where could that go in 3 years, in 4 years? Like, could they just vote on anything?
Well, it all comes down to, as well, when you take into account the big 6 clubs, for example, if we're just, for argument's sake, if they're saying that they want the league to be cut down because they have European commitments and they don't want to play so many games over the course of a season, what about Burnley, who wouldn't have European commitments and therefore would be losing gate receipts because of because there's 2 clubs less, which means they've got 2 less fixtures to play? Or do you know what I mean? Each club has.
The losers are essentially the other 11 in the Premier League.
Exactly.
They're the ones who lose the most across
exactly.
top to bottom. Because actually the gate. It's funny to talk about the gates, because the gates will be higher in all the EFL clubs, wouldn't they? Probably because. Yeah, through economics, you would hope that they would actually be able to lower their ticket admission prices.
Yeah,
and you've hit the nail on the head, though. You've hit the nail on the head where you say who the losers are. The losers are the other 11.
Time I got something right.
For whatever reason, they've bent over and had their tummy tickled. But these other 11, sooner or later, the gap between the 6, or the 9, or the 6 and 3 halves, and the other 11 will get bigger and bigger. You will have 11 teams, or once every now and then you might get West Ham or Southampton struggling. You will get those 11 teams floating around relegation in the cycle. And when they go down, they are going to struggle to come back, because they have to win a division that's difficult to win. The parachute payments are gone. They'll lose their best players, because any players who are any good, the Vultures will cherry pick them and put them in their Europa League squad. Okay, there's no Carabao Cup squad anymore, but fine. But those teams, you have to win the division, or if you happen to finish second, you may get the opportunity to play a team who's already in the Premier League for a chance to go up, and they'll never get back in. So teams like Burnley, who will go down one day, like Bournemouth just did, that's who is essentially writing their own death warrant.
You say Burnley. What happens when Burnley want like a takeover in a couple of years, and they go, oh, sorry, we're just going to have to speak.
It's the same as FIFA Fair Play, wasn't it?
We're just going to have to speak to Arsenal and Spurs about that. How do they get?
Yeah, but come on. Let's just. A lot of people say that the Newcastle takeover was stopped because the clubs kicked up a fuss about it. First of all, the clubs shouldn't have the power to do that. They shouldn't have the power to go against sort of someone coming in if they pass the league's checks. Make no mistake about it. The reason the Newcastle takeover didn't go through was because of piracy. That was the biggest black mark on those proposed owners' sort of record, and there was no way of working around it. The Premier League looked at it and simply said, we either upset one of our biggest broadcast partners in one of our most profitable regions, which is of course the Middle East and that sort of area where beIN Sports operate, or we let this consortium take over Newcastle United and we keep Newcastle happy. They picked where the money was. It isn't about, for me, some clubs did make their concerns known about the fact that this was happening, and they did raise points about it, but that's not why it didn't go through. And there are a lot of Newcastle fans who have got to be in their bonnet about this, who I think are acting way over the top. At the end of the day, someone who's been robbing the Premier League blind for years with piracy just tried to buy a Premier League club, and that's why they weren't allowed to do so. It's as simple as that.
It's an obvious theory. It's an obvious theory, though, isn't it? It's an obvious theory. There was something about the time that took, and whether it's true or not, it's understandable that people are going to look at that and start scratching their heads a little bit.
Yeah, of course, and
I think
they're well within their rights.
I think like Daniel Levy will want to sell Tottenham in the next year or two. They've changed the board structure. Some of the people they've appointed to the new board structure have a history of dealing with club acquisitions or sales. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Are the other five, when that time comes, whoever's going to buy it, it could be a peasant, I have no idea. But when that time comes, are the other 5 or 8? And already we're forgetting these other 3; they're so insignificant. But that's where we are, and it hasn't even started yet. But are the other 5 going to look at it and say, no, we don't fancy that? You said league checks there. Are the other 6 going to vote on what the league checks are? Like, I don't really understand that element of what power do these guys have.
This is the thing. The other 5, let's say if one of the big 6 is being sold, the other 5 are never going to agree to someone who puts that club in a stronger position coming in, are they? Because it works against them. They cannot have that kind of power. It's impossible. That's why the Premier League, as a body, needs to be completely independent from any of the clubs, and there shouldn't be clubs, in my opinion, who have a stronger pull or a stronger influence over decisions that are made than others do.
So why the clubs need... It digresses a little bit, but why do clubs need to vote on anything?
Well, how else do you get... It's like the whole world. We vote in a democratic society, don't we? Like, we vote for the government. The members of parliament have a vote. So obviously, when there's a big decision, they put it 1 vote each. All of the 90, however many clubs.
Yeah,
they get one club. There's no way to do it.
I think right now it works quite well. I think that 14 out of 20 is a solid majority. It's a solid majority. It's a fair amount, and that's how it should remain. Given it, the minute you change that to 9, and 6 of them are already the big heavyweights in the division, you're asking for trouble. For me, it's a no-go. I agree, though, that something needs to be done to protect the lower league clubs.
Between that and what's currently going.
Yeah, there's got to be something. And, I've made this suggestion before, and people have said to me, but the system would just be abused. Maybe it would, but I guess my kind of sort of theory would be that there is a pot which the Premier League contribute to, kind of like an emergency pot, that when clubs do come into financial trouble, as long as everything is in order in terms of their books and their evidence that they show, they're punished maybe by being relegated the division, so that clubs aren't doing it just for the sake of it, but they're saved kind of financially. So say you were in League One, you're really struggling financially, you're about to go bust, you can get a bailout from this pot, from this fund. But with that, you have to go down into League 2. Because otherwise, if there isn't a punishment as well, then clubs will just do it all the time and say, look, we're manipulating our books and our figures.
There'll be some dodginess there, wouldn't there?
Exactly. But if you had to go down a division, it wouldn't be as common.
Would you take the risk? Yeah.
That's how the points deductions came in 10, 15 years ago, wasn't it? Because essentially what clubs were doing was they were putting themselves into administration, staying up in the division, and then everything was kind of all right. And so what they did was they imposed, Yeah, it was a 9-10 point deduction. I think quite a few clubs have had it recently, but I think Leicester had it a little while back, and that's how they sort of did it. But yeah, systems will be abused, of course they will. But there are little things Premier League clubs could do and still should do, even if this goes ahead, to increase revenue. You're going on a pre-season tour to China. Let's be clear about this, right? The reduction to 18 teams is nothing to do with the amount of games and tournaments. It's to have a longer pre-season so they can go around doing commercial ventures and long elongated pre-seasons in Asia and America and places like that. That's exactly why it is. There's no doubt about that, and I guess that's fine. But why can't a Premier League team be forced to play an away game at its nearest lower league rivals every pre-season, where they commit to playing a first team to generate gate receipts? Why can't they do that anyway?
Boring, don't they?
Exactly.
Arsenal Barnet.
Yeah, Arsenal used to do it with Barnet. Why not do some kind of partnership scheme where clubs are partnered up with lower league clubs, and then they can help them in a number of ways. They can help them by having a pre-season friendly, loaning players if they want. Like, that's something that could be explored as well. I'm not saying that there's no issues with that, but
it's not perfect. Exactly, yeah. It's not perfect, but there are things that can be explored. I guess in that argument there, if you are, let me think of a team. If you are Plymouth and you're stranded in down in deepest, darkest Devon, then your nearest team is nowhere to be seen, but your local rivals are tooled up, sitting next to Chelsea and Arsenal, and so on and so forth. So there are flaws, but there are things that can be done irrespective of this. If people really, really give a shit, there are things that people, and not like Tottenham 11 versus Barnet, and I look down the 11 and I don't even know who like 9 of them are. Why can't Gareth Bale rock out of Brisbane Road and give those fans a full gate? Why can't that happen?
Sorry.
No, agreed. Right, guys, it's been emotional. We've kind of tried to pull the thing apart. We've discussed various other ways of maybe doing it. It's just a good old general chat about Project Big Picture. Now, there are elements of it that we're not 100% clear on, just because the clarity simply isn't there at the moment, and I'm sure there'll be lots of you with thoughts as well. So let us know those thoughts in the comments section below. Smash the like button if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are on our way towards 10,000 subscribers, and as soon as we get there, we'll be giving away a free Arsenal home shirt when we'll be bringing up a competition. You guys can enter and the winner will get that. Also, just a quick reminder that if you wish to support the podcast, you can do so for just £3 a month. If you head over to patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna, you'll receive access to exclusive content, priority on the fans show, priority when submitting questions for our experts, the likes of Kevin Campbell and Adrian Clark, a gift after 3 months of membership, and of course our exclusive content kicks off this week, where we're going to be slowly reviewing Arsene Wenger's autobiography, My Life in Red and White. So if you are a Patreon member, I'll be reading a few chapters. We'll be going through that. I'll be bringing you guys onto the pod with me as well, so we can exchange thoughts on some of the stuff that Arsene Wenger has had to say. So really looking forward to doing that series. And as lots of you have been asking for it in the comments and in my DMs, we're going to be bringing you some FIFA 21 content as well. It's starting from in the next few days. So we had to put a little vote out earlier on what you guys would like to see. And an Arsenal career mode has run away with it. So I'll be playing an Arsenal career mode. So you'll probably hear me effing and blinding throughout that. But we'll be streaming those games live. So looking forward to doing that as well. Alavi holds his face because he remembers the days when I used to go around his house across the road and batter him at Pro Evo, despite
just like I stopped playing 20 years ago, so like, I assumed that everyone else did, but you still play computer games.
No, the difference is you can't get away with it anymore, that's all it is.
I was more of a Sonic the Hedgehog man himself.
We used to play classic Brazil versus classic Argentina.
Yeah, we did. We used to play that literally every day.
We
literally used to play that match every day. I always used to win, obviously. But yeah, great stuff. Right, until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe. Thank you to tvsportsblog.com. Check out the website, and thanks again to John and the team over there. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Social Club, where we'll have actual football to discuss. We don't count that boring international stuff. So until next time, take care.